Good evening, groundlings. Good to be with you for Monday. And sorry to do two evenings in a row. I usually like to post, as you know, when it's early morning and outside, but it was so foggy and murky this morning that there really wasn't much to show you. I've put a few pictures on Instagram, which you might like to see, but they're pretty much just, they look like paving slabs, the pictures, because they're just grey murk. But it was very atmospheric, but it wasn't, and I was feeling pretty, almost as foggy as the day. This morning, hay fever has descended, as I may have mentioned last night, and so I was feeling pretty thick-headed earlier on. But it's good to be with you tonight, and happy St. David's Day. I thought, given we're remembering him today, that I'd read you a piece about one of my Welsh ancestors. The Rumseys come originally from Rumsey in Hampshire, hence the name, but for many centuries were in South Wales, or South and Central Wales, and this is a piece, it's a tale I've told before in other contexts and sermons, because I think it's just a delightful one. But this is from my Lent book, Strangely Warmed, which I wrote about 10 years ago. Most of the pieces in it are about 20 years old, actually, because they're from a column I used to write. Quite a lot of this book I find pretty excruciating now. I think a lot of it is kind of too flippant, really. But I was trying to write a satirical book for Lent, and sometimes didn't achieve that, and occasionally perhaps did. But anyway, this is one of the pieces I'm happy to look at again, and it's called Race Most Wondrous. Standing alone, haloed by the first flies of spring, the silence of a graveyard is overwhelming. The dead don't seem absent, just quiet, dumbstruck in the face of glory. To feel the hush at the end of our babbling is an invaluable Lenten lesson, and only emphasised by the epitaphs mouthing mutely from each headstone. In various states of decay, these protruding teeth carry poignant reminders of how words eventually fail us all. One such example is in the churchyard at Crickhowell in Powys, where rest several generations of my family. Here, an inscription commemorates my forebear Walter Rumsey, who died in 1834. I wonder if you can see the picture of his gravestone. Yeah, you can see that. That's Walter Rumsey's headstone. Under his name is engraved a quote from the Psalms: "Mark the perfect man, and behold the upright, for the end of that man is peace." Trusting that this was a sentiment volunteered by his family and not suggested by Walter himself, you read on. Also of Anne, relict of the same Walter. "She hath done what she could." And that's in slightly smaller lettering at the foot of Walter's grave. Well, it's her grave too, as his wife, relict. But at first view, this glaring contrast with her stainless spouse looks like a rather unkind slight, a sort of glossed over version of "poor dear." That is, until you notice that it too is a direct quote from Scripture, being Jesus' words of rebuke to the dinner guests who moan about the woman pouring the jar of costly perfume over his head. "Let her alone," he growls. "She hath done what she could. She has anointed my body beforehand for its burial," adding that her actions will live on in memory wherever the good news is proclaimed. Suddenly Anne, relict of Walter, emerges from the shadows, not as a paragon perhaps, but as someone who did what she could. Someone who, given their lease of life and aware of its constraints, invested each opportunity with devoted, even extravagant attention. The more you think about it, the finer an epitaph it becomes. After all, much of the time, I don't do what I can. I avoid the possible task by pondering on what I would do if things were different. This kind of wishful thinking robs us of the potential to find what Paul Tillich called the eternal now, the immense significance of the present moment. Ultimately, it's ignorant both of life and death, a daydream of immortality. Doing what we can, on the other hand, anoints the body for its burial. I continue in that piece to talk about other ways in which our memorials might reveal things about us that are perhaps not easy to see in later years. They speak of the times in which they were written, of course, but that epitaph, "She hath done what she could," it's become since a kind of family motto, and we've used it on all sorts of occasions, and I think that that's a fine thing to aspire to. Do what you can, not what you can't. I pray that that may be possible for you and for me in the new day ahead. God bless you as you go to ground.